Hey, Terrace CRC. I Another video, a story to share. This is in light of the recent. Well, I understand that this was Indigenous Awareness Month in Canada, and we recently paid some attention to that in a worship service as well. And so, with that in mind, and the concept of cultural captivity in mind, I want to share this story. I've told a couple of people this one already, but this happened back in 2010. It was a special event for me. I was the caretaker chaplain at a camp on Vancouver Island, 85 acres of oceanfront wilderness. Um, and with the job came a house. And so myself and my dog lived in that house. And my responsibility was to kind of keep an eye on the property when there were no camps in at the camp. And when there was a chaplain needed for a camp, then I was the official chaplain as well. And you can look it up. It was called Moorcroft Camp. It's just a bit up island from Nanaimo. And it is now a regional park. The camp closed down, which is a whole interesting topic in itself. In our tradition, we did Christian schools, but many other Christian churches set up camps. And this one was set up by the United Church, but eventually just wasn't operable anymore. It was just too much cost. And so they sold it as a ecological preserve because it had 4 different ecosystems on the one property. All kinds of interest. I could show you pictures, but you can look it up on the map, Moorcroft, and you'll find that regional park is where I used to live for a couple of years. And at one point, I was out for a morning walk. A lot of the area around it was woods, or still forested, still wild. So not even the park itself, but around it. That has somewhat changed now. And then actually at the back end of the park, a lot of movie stars and musicians lived in fancy houses. And once in a while, you'd walking around, you'd meet somebody that was clearly in that category. So I had been out for a morning walk, and I came across this. What I first noticed was the head of a deer, and then I realized that other parts of it were laying neatly stacked as well, including the skin. And so I deduced that somebody had been hunting and took the meat, and did not need the head or the skin. And so I thought, well, that's such a waste. Deerskin has uses. So I thought, I'm gonna see what I can do with this, if I can find some place to find it useful. And I remember I might have left it there for the time being. I went back home and I looked up on the internet, how can you preserve a deer skin? And the article said you could just throw it in the garbage bag and put it in your freezer, and that will keep it. So that's what I did. And I thought that was pretty weird and cool. And I remember when some of my kids came to visit or others came to visit, and I would tell that story, they would be grossed out and they wouldn't want to eat any food that I had prepared because it might have been in the freezer with the deer skin. Oh, well. So some week, but I couldn't find in fact, I almost forgot I had it in the freezer. I couldn't find a place for it. I had approached some people that I knew, and nobody had a possibility for usefulness. And then one weekend on July 6th, that weekend of 2010, a group came into the camp that was an indigenous group from somewhere else on the island. And it was a young men's group. So these young men were being mentored. Our cook at the camp was also indigenous. So he often had some interesting insights to share about about food also. So they were in the camp. They didn't need me as a chaplain, but as a staff person, I was, uh, kind of as a representative of the board. I was available and I participated, or I was in the building for meals and things like that. And so once the first supper, I think, or no, the last supper time or lunchtime of that particular camp, um, a young man came and asked if they could sing a thank you song using their drums. These were the handheld drums, and we said yes. And so I think three of them stood up and sang this indigenous thank you song to this, particularly the cooks and and the staff of the camp. And that was just fascinating, and it felt special to have that shared rather than kind of your typical formal thank you where everybody's awkward. This was maybe still awkward, but it was still it was fascinating as well. So I went to talk to the guys afterwards at their table, and I said, guys, I have this deer skin in my freezer, and I don't know what to do with it. I'm looking for, a place to donate it or somebody to give it to where it would be put to use, because I thought it was a waste to just leave it out in nature. And the guy who had led the singing, his eyes went wide, and he said, I've been looking for the longest time, or I shouldn't exaggerate. I've recently started looking for my first deer skin so that I can make my first drum. And so it's part of their thing that as a young person you make your first drum. And I suppose in the original culture you would hunt the deer yourself, that you use the skin that and take from it the skin that you would use to make your drum. So he said, oh, if you don't mind, I'll take it. And so I ran over to my house and got the garbage bag with the frozen deer skin in it and gave it to them. And they weren't grossed out like my own family was. And we talked some more. And here's the part that I found fascinating and is related to cultural captivity, right? We, in our version of Christianity, have certain understandings of private property, which indigenous peoples often do not share. And that's where they then get accused by Europeans of theft, when their culture has never had, everything is shared. So that's not theft then, that's, I'm using the lawnmower that's sitting there to mow my lawn. And that was an earlier learning that I had done. And so this whole idea of private property, and then when you make something in our culture, it's special and it's yours. And your nowadays your parents put a magnet on it, put it on the fridge, and take pictures and show everybody the thing that you made. So he was telling me that when he finished his drum, the cultural expectation, the cultural pattern was that as soon as he finished it, he had to give it away. This is just so different. And so he said he was going to, his first option he was going to consider was when he finished making the drum, he would donate it to the camp so that we could have it on the facility for whenever such a thing was needed. I just found that the neatest thing. Not the donating it to the camp, although that was good too, but what does that teach in terms of cultural values when you make a thing that you can't hang on to it, that you need to give it away. You can't hold on to the first thing that you make like that. And yeah, that's been on my mind a lot since, as have other things that I've learned about indigenous culture. If any of you are interested in reading, um, I don't have my recent favorite with me, But I read about a year ago, I read Braiding Sweetgrass, fascinating book, um, by a lady who was trained in European style biology, and then started making a study of how what she learned in academic biology, I'll call it scientific biology, how it, if it matched up with the knowledge of the elders of her people. And she makes some really surprising discoveries. And she does that, she explains that all without like attacking scientific biology, but you get a pretty clear picture that the Aboriginal elders knew stuff that biology thinks it has just discovered. So I kind of like that kind of stuff. And another one, this doesn't often work, but oh yeah, medicine. It's called Medicine Walk. This is another one that I read a couple of years ago. That that is, it's more about a personal journey of relationship, and I find it just because with authors from indigenous cultures, you'll feel the different way of viewing the world in how they say things. And so some of those things that I've learned in this kind of journey have I try not to be too antagonistic towards my own culture, but have certainly made me a little humbler about some of the knowledge that we have that we think is superior to anything else that exists out there, and some of the cultural rules that we have, such as private property instead of communal property, that's related to the cultural captivity thing. So I thought I'd share that story today uh, as my video of the week. Catch you next time, or catch me next time.